Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the mist, into the hiss and hum of a Viking bathhouse where the air itself seems to breathe. You're standing at the threshold of a longhouse, wrapped in the smell of wet ash, pine resin, and something faintly smoky, like a forest sighing in the rain. The floor creaks underfoot, the wood darkened by years of steam. It's late in the day, and you can hear laughter from inside, low, rumbling, maybe a song or two that's more enthusiastic than in tune. You probably wouldn't survive this, not because of the heat or the smoke, but because you'd be elbowed aside by a 6-foot Norse farmer who's been chopping timber since sunrise and thinks light scrubbing involves sand. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The warmth hits you first. It's not a gentle sauna heat, it's the full-bodied hug of steam mixed with the scent of charred stone and damp moss. The Vikings call this a badstaffa, their version of a bathhouse, though that word doesn't quite capture it. It's part spa, part social hub, part pre-battle cleansing ritual. You duck under a low beam, your breath fogging up instantly. The fire pit in the center glows with river stones heated until they hum. Someone ladles water over them, and the room exhales in a white rush that feels like stepping into another world. You can barely see the outlines of people through the mist, silhouettes moving slowly, almost dreamily. A man scrubs his arms with ash and sand. Another pours water from a birch bark bucket over his head. There's the sound of skin slapping skin, laughter, the scrape of wooden ladles. A woman enters carrying herbs, juniper, sweet gale, and something that smells sharply green. She throws a handful into the steam, and suddenly the air tastes cleaner, alive. Historians still argue whether this weekly wash was truly universal or more of a chieftain's luxury. Some sources insist the common Norsemen bathed once a week, every Saturday, while others suggest it was as often as weather and wood supply allowed. What's certain is that they were unusually clean for their time. English chroniclers, half impressed and half horrified, noted that these heathen men bathed more often than was decent. And perhaps that's the most Viking insult imaginable: you smell too good. Someone hands you a wooden scoop of water. You hesitate. It's not for drinking, it's for rinsing. The Vikings didn't always soak in tubs. They sweated, scraped, rinsed. A horn comb rests nearby, carved from reindeer bone, its teeth smooth with use. You notice a small clay pot filled with soap made from animal fat and ash, thick and gray, smelling faintly like smoked bacon. Not glamorous, but effective. You rub a bit between your fingers, it foams just enough. The man next to you grins through a fog of steam. His hair, blonde gone dark with water, clings to his temples. He says, "Clean body, clean honor." Or at least that's how the Sagas might translate it. The Norse linked hygiene to dignity, to readiness. You didn't show up to the thing, their community gathering, smelling like a swamp. You didn't court someone with your beard matted in butter. And if you died in battle, well, best to meet Valhalla freshly scrubbed. Outside, the snow has started to fall, fine as flour. You step out of the bathhouse into the sting of cold air, skin glowing red, lungs wide open. The contrast makes you dizzy, in a pleasant way. You can see the fjord stretching dark and glassy below, a few lights flickering from other longhouses. Somewhere, someone beats a rug with a stick, somewhere else, the bleating of goats. But right here, wrapped in the heat still clinging to your skin, the world feels clean. The sagas rarely describe moments like this outright. They talk about raids, kings, gods, but tucked between the lines, you find quiet mentions of combs, of bathing, of scent. In one fragment, a man mocks another for having dirty fingernails. In another, a woman refuses a suitor because his hair hung in tangles like a troll's. These are not the details of a barbaric people. They're the complaints of a culture that cared deeply about appearances. And appearances, as you'll see, were everything. A few hours later, the same longhouse hums again, this time with dinner. Broth, bread, smoked fish, laughter. You sit near the fire pit, watching how the heat turns the air gold. The same men who scrubbed their skin raw are now plaiting their hair, rubbing oil into their beards. Someone sharpens a blade on a whetstone, pausing to glance at his reflection in the metal. Vanity? Maybe, but also survival. In a world where alliances shifted faster than the tide, looking sharp was a kind of armor. A quirky tidbit, archaeologists have found more combs in Viking graves than weapons. Bone combs, ivory combs, even ones made of walrus tusk, objects of care and craftsmanship. One grave in Sweden held a woman buried with her grooming kit, tweezers, ear spoon, and a tiny knife for trimming nails. The message carved silently into the dirt: she was someone who took care of herself. The crackle of the fire deepens. Outside, the cold sharpens into night. A few children playing near the doorway, their laughter drifting like sparks. Someone tosses another log into the flames, and the smoke coils toward the rafters, turning into ghosts of steam again. You start to understand. The bathhouse isn't just for washing, it's for belonging. The Norse bathed together, sweated together, told stories through the haze. Privacy wasn't the point. Community was. And yet, not everyone approved. When the Christian missionaries began to arrive, they were unnerved by how clean their would-be converts were. Bathing was, in their eyes, suspiciously sensual, an indulgence of the flesh. The Vikings, by contrast, saw it as moral discipline. Two worldviews collided, one soap-scented, one sanctimonious, and between them, the steam kept rising. You lie back against the wall, your mind slipping a little with the heat. The conversation around you blurs into a soft murmur. The room smells of herbs and sweat and earth. Someone hums a low tune, a lullaby maybe, or just a melody for the fire. The stones hiss one last time as another ladle of water meets their surface. Outside, the night waits. Inside, everything slows. Clean body, clear mind, warm bones. You might almost fall asleep here if not for the faint thought that somewhere a saga scribe might one day forget to mention this, forget that heroes, too, needed a good scrub before glory. The steam curls higher, the fire sinks low, and you, for now, stay perfectly still.
The next morning smells like pine smoke, barley porridge, and beeswax, the ordinary perfume of Viking life. You wake to the sound of someone sharpening a blade outside and realize the world you drifted into last night is already bustling again. The longhouse glows with thin shafts of dawn light leaking through the smoke hole above. Someone's hung a line of freshly washed tunics near the hearth, steaming faintly in the warmth. The air hums with quiet rhythm, hands weaving, spoons clinking, the scrape of a comb through thick hair. You rub the sleep from your eyes and spot it, the humble comb, again. Small, pale, carved from bone, every tooth sanded smooth. One of the men sits near the doorway, legs crossed, grooming himself with the patience of a cat. His hair is long, golden brown, and neatly parted. His beard's been oiled with animal fat until it gleams. When he catches you watching, he grins, a little proud maybe, and says something that sounds like, "Better to face battle looking like a king than smelling like a corpse." The Vikings, it turns out, were obsessed with grooming, not just because of vanity, though there was plenty of that, but because hygiene, in their world, was reputation. Your hair, your beard, your nails, even your breath, these things told people who you were before you spoke a word. And in a society where first impressions might decide your next trade deal or your next duel, that mattered. Outside the longhouse, morning has broken into a crisp light that cuts through the frost above. A few men kneel near the stream, splashing their faces, combs tucked into their belts like knives. You follow them down the slope, your boots sinking into the soft mud. The water's clear enough to see the pebbles at the bottom. They splash their faces with quick, practiced movements, like they've done this every day of their lives. One of them pulls out a tiny bronze mirror, barely palm-sized, and studies his reflection. The surface is warped, but he adjusts his hair all the same. Another trims his mustache with a small blade, catching stray hairs on his fingertip. Someone else uses a bone pick to clean under his nails. It's oddly modern, this scene, like a rustic barber shop with more mud and less gossip. You remember something from a medieval English chronicle. A monk complained that Viking men took baths every Saturday, combed their hair daily, and changed their clothes often. His tone wasn't admiration, it was alarm. The clean, well-groomed Norsemen were apparently far too successful with local women, too handsome for their own good, he might as well have written. And here's a mainstream fact. Archaeologists have found grooming tools in almost every major Viking settlement. York, Dublin, Hedeby, Birka, tweezers, razors, ear spoons, even little grooming kits on chains, like early pocket accessories. One comb found in York was made of whalebone, so finely carved that even modern reproductions can't capture its smoothness. The Vikings clearly didn't do rough and rugged by choice. They did polished and practical, battle-ready beauty, if you will. Inside again, a woman sits by the fire plaiting her husband's hair. Her fingers move deftly, weaving in bits of leather cord and bronze beads. The man sits patiently, sipping from a wooden cup. Their daughter watches, giggling each time the braid slips loose. This isn't vanity, it's intimacy. Grooming in this world is a language of care. The Norse had a saying that a man's hair and beard should never shame him, and that meant maintenance. Even warriors, especially warriors, took time to braid their beards before raids. A tidy braid meant your beard wouldn't get caught in your helmet strap or tangled in your mail shirt. Practical, sure, but also symbolic. A braided beard said, "I'm ready," for battle, for life, for whatever Odin's got planned next. And yes, there's your quirky tidbit. Some Viking warriors apparently dyed their beards blonde or even red using lye soap. Imagine a hall full of burly men comparing tones, like yours is more sun gold, mine's more harvest fire. The stuff could burn your skin if you weren't careful, but beauty has always come with a little danger. You glance around and notice the tools of grooming scattered like talismans. Bone combs, bits of bronze, scraps of cloth, a small pot of scented oil, rendered from animal fat mixed with herbs. Not perfume exactly, but a way to keep the hair soft, manageable, maybe even fragrant in its own earthy way. By midday, the longhouse feels lighter. People move with the ease of routine, combing, braiding, adjusting belts. Even the children imitate it, tugging at their own little knots of hair. You realize something subtle. Cleanliness isn't separate from courage here. It's part of the same discipline. When you head outside again, the sun is sharp on the water. A man sits sharpening his sword, pausing every so often to check his reflection in the blade. You can almost hear him thinking, if I look fierce enough, maybe I'll scare the bad luck away. But cleanliness wasn't just armor, it was attraction. The sagas love to linger on appearances. There's one in which a hero is described as so fair and clean that his hair shone like silver. Another boasts that a woman's hands were white as fresh snow, a clear nod to her habit of washing often. Even Thor himself, the hammer-swinging thunder god, was sometimes portrayed washing his hands before feasts. Historians still argue whether the Norse actually looked as radiant as the sagas claim, or if that was just poetic license. But it's telling that the ideal Viking, male or female, was imagined as spotless, shining, immaculate. A clean Viking was a powerful Viking. A clean Viking was respected. And in a world where your name was your legacy, being remembered as well-kept could matter just as much as well-fought. By evening, the fires are crackling again. The longhouse glows amber from within. You catch sight of a group of young men practicing swordplay outside, their hair tied back nicely, their beards trimmed. Each move is sharp, controlled. They're laughing between swings, but there's a kind of grace in it, a performance as much as a practice. And that's the secret thread running through Viking grooming. It's theatrical. Every clean hand, every braid, every bead, stagecraft for a hard life. The Norse knew how to turn routine into ritual. One of the older men calls out from the doorway, teasing, "Careful, boys, don't mess your hair before supper." They laugh, but you see them patting it back anyway. Even warriors have vanity. Later, when the light fades and the fire settles into quiet coals, you notice the combs again, lined up nicely on a shelf, gleaming faintly in the firelight like a row of small bones. Tomorrow they'll be used again, and the day after that, and long after these people are dust, archaeologists will find them and realize these weren't brutes. These were people who liked to smell nice, look decent, and face the world with a bit of shine. You settle near the fire, the scent of pine and soap still clinging faintly to the air. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. Someone hums a soft tune about heroes and harvests. You think of that English monk again, grumbling about 2 clean heathens, and you can't help but smile. Because tonight in this hall of warmth and steam and polished pride, you're surrounded by a truth that even the monks couldn't scrub away. Being clean for the Vikings wasn't just hygiene, it was identity.
The wind whistles against the eaves of the longhouse, carrying the sharp tang of the sea and something faintly soapy. You wake to find half the village outside, sleeves rolled, hands red from scrubbing tunics in the stream. The water glints under a pale sun, and the air smells of wet wool, wood ash, and faintly goat fat. Laundry day in a Viking settlement isn't glamorous, but it's oddly beautiful. You step outside and the cold slaps you awake, clean as truth. A few women laugh as they beat linen against the rocks. A boy tries to help, loses his grip, and splashes half the village. No one seems to mind. There's music in the motion. Beat, rinse, ring, repeat. And above it all, the chatter. Who's courting who owes whose uncle 2 silver coins, and which trader smells faintly like fish. If you're expecting the Vikings to be savages in animal pelts, this scene will surprise you. They loved fabric, soft linen in summer, thick wool in winter, and they loved keeping it clean. Linen was prized, not just for comfort, but for status. White linen meant time, care, and enough wealth to afford a few extra shirts. You spot one man holding up his tunic to the light, pleased that it's almost white again. In this world, that's a flex.
You wander toward the long, low drying racks where shirts and cloaks flutter like banners in the wind. The sight is almost poetic, cloth waving against the endless northern sky. Someone has hung a pair of socks over a spear haft, the wool steaming faintly. Beside you, a girl rubs a stain out of a sleeve using a lump of soap rendered from animal fat and lye, gray and gritty, smelling faintly of fire and salt. "Don't eat it," she says deadpan, catching your curious look. "We tried that once." You laugh and she grins, then adds, "It's for clothes, not tongues." Historians still argue whether Viking soap was mainly for laundry or for skin. The truth is probably both. Soap wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity in a world where ash and fat were plentiful and dirt was inevitable. The same stuff used to scrub a shirt might also scrub a soldier, depending on the day. It wasn't gentle, but it got the job done. A quirky tidbit: Viking women sometimes scented their wash water with herbs, juniper, thyme, or even crushed birch leaves. Not because they were vain, but because clean-smelling clothes were considered good manners. If you met someone and they wrinkled their nose, it wasn't your reputation that stank, it was your laundry. As the morning deepens, you start to notice another ritual unfolding nearby, a quiet, strangely intimate one. A few people sit in a circle near the fire, heads bent close. At first, you think they're braiding hair again. Then you realize they're delousing. It's not the most glamorous image, but it's oddly tender. One woman tilts her daughter's head, parting the hair with a comb carved from bone. Another hums softly, her fingers moving with practiced patience. The little girl biggles when the comb tickles her scalp. No disgust, no shame, just routine. Lice were a fact of life in most medieval societies, but the Vikings fought back harder than most. Their combs, so finely made, so frequently used, were both tools and trophies in the war against itch. And judging by how many were found in graves, they took that war seriously. Archaeologists have even found fossilized lice caught between the teeth of Viking combs, a tiny record of daily care frozen in time. One man nearby jokes, "Better a live beard than a dead one." Everyone laughs. It's the sort of humor that keeps cold climates warm. You sit for a while watching the scene, the sunlight glinting on the stream, the soft slap of cloth, the rhythmic scrape of combs. It feels almost modern, this shared maintenance of body and home, ordinary but full of affection. By midday, the chores turn into a social affair. Someone brings out mead. Someone else starts singing a tune about a fisherman who lost his boots but caught his bride. The story's ridiculous, the laughter contagious. You can't help but notice how the lines between cleanliness, love, and community blur here. The same hands that wash the clothes also braid the hair, pass the food, hold the children. You catch the smell of something new, oil and smoke. Turning, you see a young man polishing a wooden comb, rubbing it with a bit of seal fat to make it shine. He smiles, not at you, but at someone behind you. You turn to see a girl wringing out a tunic, her braid damp, her cheeks pink from the cold. Their eyes meet. He stands taller, she looks away, pretending not to notice, but the way her lips twitch gives her away. In a place where every scent lingers, smelling nice might just be the best flirting strategy available. And here's your mainstream fact. Saturday, Laugardag, literally washing day, was sacred to the Norse. It was the day for cleaning bodies, clothes, and spirits. Work paused, feasts waited. It was a pause button in a world that rarely stopped. So if love blossomed anywhere, it was probably after the Saturday scrub.
The sagas hint at this quietly. Lovers meeting near streams, stolen glances during washing, the lingering scent of soap and smoke. Maybe romance didn't begin with perfume and poetry. It began with clean fingernails and a combed beard. As the sun dips low, you help hang the last tunic, the air turning cool and damp again. The garments ripple gently in the wind, a living gallery of color. Undyed gray, sun-bleached beige, a few pieces dyed soft red or blue from madder and woad. You notice a streak of frost clinging to one sleeve, melting into a glittering bead. Inside the longhouse, the evening fire flares to life again. The people who spent the day scrubbing now glow in the orange light, clean and content. The same woman who warned you not to eat the soap now sits brushing her hair, her daughter beside her, both laughing at something whispered between them. It hits you how communal this all is, how cleanliness is shared, not private. No locked doors, no personal bathrooms, just warmth, work, and good company. The Vikings cleaned themselves together, lived together, and loved together. You settle near the hearth again, stretching your legs toward the fire. A pot of stew bubbles softly. Outside, the last light fades into indigo. The longhouse smells faintly of soap, wood, and stew, a strange but comforting mix. And as you drift toward sleep, you realize something simple but profound. Cleanliness, for these people, wasn't just about removing dirt. It was about keeping connection to the land, to each other, to the rhythm of the week that always ended in warmth and water. Tomorrow the fire will burn again, the water will heat again, and the same hands will reach for the same combs, each motion carrying centuries of quiet ritual. The Vikings may have swung axes and sailed to unknown worlds, but every story, every journey, every love probably began with the same soft rhythm: beat, rinse, ring, repeat.
The morning starts with a hush, the kind of stillness that comes before the steam. You can smell it before you see it, the faint scent of heated stone and damp birch drifting through the air. A thin curl of smoke threads from the low-roofed building near the stream. That's the Laug, the Saturday bathhouse. It's not much to look at. Rough timber walls, turf roof, door hanging slightly askew, but it might just be the Viking world's greatest invention. Inside, the stones are already glowing. You can hear the low hum of voices, laughter, the splash of ladles. This isn't just any Saturday. It's Lagradagr, washing day, the Viking weekend. You step closer, your boots sinking into the damp moss. Someone holds the door open for you, and a wave of heat rolls out like a living thing. The air inside is thick, shimmering. You can barely see through the haze, just the outlines of people moving slowly, relaxed, unhurried. It feels holy somehow. Even before you remember, for these people, it was. Steam curls around your face as you step inside. The light comes from the fire pit in the center, where stones the size of skulls glow red hot. Water hisses as it hits them, filling the air with a sound like a deep sigh. You sit down carefully on a wooden bench, the surface slick and warm. Around you, bodies glisten. Old men, young men, women with long braids coiled like rope, children giggling as they splash water. It's crowded but calm, the kind of intimacy born of trust. You breathe in the scent of birch leaves, animal soap, and something sweet, juniper maybe. Someone passes you a ladle, motioning for you to pour water over the stones. You do, and the steam surges up again, wrapping everyone in a single cloud. A man beside you says something in Old Norse, his voice low and easy. You catch a few words: clean, Saturday, Odin. He smiles, eyes closed, leaning back like he's melting into the warmth. For him, this isn't indulgence, it's order. Because for the Norse, Saturday wasn't just about washing the body.
It was a spiritual reset, a clearing of the week's grime, literal and otherwise. Clean skin meant clean spirit. And maybe, just maybe, a better shot at impressing the gods. Of course, not everyone agreed. When the first Christian missionaries arrived, their letters home were full of outrage. Not at Viking violence, but at Viking cleanliness. One English monk wrote that the Norse washed themselves every Saturday and changed their garments too often. You can almost hear his quill trembling. To the church, this kind of cleanliness bordered on vanity, even sin. Bathing together, naked, laughing, scandalous, suspicious. Surely that much scrubbing had to lead to trouble. But to the Vikings, it was innocence, shared warmth in a cold world. Historians still argue whether the Norse saw bathing as spiritual or simply social. Some claim the bathhouse was a kind of secular temple, a place where gossip, courting, and small rituals overlapped. Others think it was just practical. Get warm, get clean, go home. But when you sit here, feeling the steam pulse with every breath, it's hard to believe it wasn't sacred in its own quiet way. Someone ladles water over the stones again. The room erupts in hissing heat. You can't see more than a few feet ahead, but you can hear voices. Soft conversations in the mist. A woman laughs. Someone hums a tune that sounds ancient and comforting. The sound echoes gently off the walls like a lullaby sung by the air itself. This, the scholars say, is where news was traded. Deals were whispered, matches were made, and maybe confessions too, spoken softly into the steam where they'd dissolve harmlessly. You notice that each person seems to have their own small ritual. One man rubs his arms with fine sand before rinsing, an exfoliation method that somehow survived the centuries to modern spas. A woman massages oil into her hair before washing it. A child sits on a mother's lap, giggling as she sprinkles water onto his head. Everyone knows their part. And then you realize something else. They're clean, but they're also together. The bathhouse is the beating heart of the village, not the hall, not the temple, but here, where skin meets steam. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the wooden door. You step out into the cold, skin tingling. The contrast is breathtaking. Cold air after heat feels almost electric. Your breath fogs in the twilight. The world smells sharper now. Pine, sea, snow. You can hear laughter from behind you, muffled through the walls, like ghosts enjoying themselves. You notice the small wooden trough beside the doorway, meltwater filled with birch leaves and ice. People dunk their hands or even their heads before heading home. It's shock therapy, Viking style. You hesitate, then plunge your hand in. The cold is so pure, it almost feels hot. One of the older men catches your eye and chuckles. "Makes the blood remember it's alive," he says, wiping his face with a scrap of linen. You smile back. He's right. It's invigorating. And as you stand there, steam still rising from your skin, you can see why this ritual survived for centuries. Because it wasn't just about washing, it was about waking up to life itself. Later that evening, the longhouse glows brighter than usual. The bath day always ends with a feast. You sit among them, hair still damp, the air thick with the smell of roasted lamb and honey. Someone strums a lyre, others tap mugs in rhythm. The laughter is louder tonight, freer. Clean bodies, clean minds, clean start. One woman jokes, even Odin would smell decent today. The table bursts into laughter. Someone replies, maybe that's why he sends the ravens. They can't stand dirty mortals. You can tell if it's blasphemy or bedtime banter, but it fits perfectly in this smoky golden glow. The Christian priests, of course, were horrified. These heathens think washing can cleanse the soul, one sermon raged. But perhaps the priests missed the point. The Vikings didn't wash to absolve themselves. They washed to belong, to each other, to the turning rhythm of the week, to the pulse of life that hummed beneath the frost. A quirky tidbit. In some Scandinavian villages, long after Christianization, the Saturday bath persisted. It was so ingrained that even churchgoers timed their scrubbing to fit the new faith. Clean body for Sunday soul, as one later proverb put it. a compromise the saints might have secretly approved. As the feast winds down, you watch how the firelight paints everyone's faces. Clean skin gleams, damp hair curls in the heat. Someone yawns, someone else refills their cup. The world feels softer, slower. You realize you're seeing something profoundly human, a moment of peace carved out of a hard life. The Norse didn't have weekends in the modern sense, but they had laugradagar, a day to stop plowing, fighting, building, a day to sit in the steam, scrape off the week's grime, and start again. Outside, the snow begins to fall, thick and slow, blanketing everything in silence. The bathhouse smoke still curls into the night sky, glowing faintly in the firelight. You imagine what it must have looked like to travelers. Tiny plumes of warmth rising across the fjords, little beacons of civilization in the cold, dark north. That's the paradox of the Vikings. The world remembers their swords, but not their soap, their raids, but not their rituals. Yet here, in the hush between breaths, you can feel their true rhythm, the heartbeat of heat and cold, water and fire, body and soul. You stretch your legs toward the dying fire, letting the warmth soak into your bones. Someone hands you a mug of warm ale. You sip slowly, feeling your eyelids grow heavy. And just before sleep takes you, you hear someone murmur, "Tomorrow we begin again." The week, the work, the world. But for now, clean, calm, content. You rest.
The air in the bathhouse feels heavier tonight, steam swirling like living ghosts, flickering in the firelight as if whispering the last secrets of the north. You sit on a smooth stone bench, your skin still warm from the sauna, the scent of juniper and wood smoke clinging faintly to your hair. Somewhere in the corner, a bucket drips steadily, each drop echoing against the hollow quiet. The voices that once filled this space, boasting, laughing, chanting, have faded into time, but their warmth remains. You can almost hear them still, the ghosts of the Vikings who knew that the soul sometimes needed cleansing as much as the body. You remember what we've seen together, the combs carved with care, the soap made from ash and animal fat, the ritual of washing before feasts and battles. But this moment feels different, slower, almost sacred, because in the stillness of these sauna walls, something profound lingers. Bathing for the Vikings wasn't just about removing dirt. It was about preparing to face the world again, renewed, sharper, stronger. Many Viking sagas mention spirits lingering in the steam houses. Some say they were ancestors. Others whisper they were guardians of the hearth. In the dim glow, with shadows sliding like silent waves, you can almost believe it. There's a warmth that feels older than the fire, as if the earth itself exhales through the floorboards. In the Old Norse tongue, Laugardur, literally bath day, became the word for Saturday, a legacy still alive today, quietly tucked into Scandinavian calendars. Even now, 1,000 years later, the tradition of washing away the week remains. Modern saunas in Iceland, Finland, and Sweden echo with laughter and steam, direct descendants of those smoky longhouses. Historians still argue whether these bathing rituals were purely practical or deeply spiritual, whether they cleansed bodies or symbolized rebirth. But maybe that's the wrong debate. Maybe it was both. Because here, surrounded by mist and memory, it's easy to see that for the Vikings, warmth was survival, and survival in their world was sacred. You lean back, closing your eyes. The heat loosens your muscles. The air hums faintly with life. You think about the rhythm of those ancient weeks, days of toil, raids, weaving, cooking, and how every seventh day ended in firelight and steam. Families gathered, warriors softened, Enemies sometimes even bathed together after battle, setting aside swords for wooden ladles. There's a strange intimacy in that, a reminder that beneath armor and fury, they were human too. The soap, the comb, the steam, they weren't luxuries. They were bridges between chaos and calm, between the stormy sea and the hearth's glow, between life and the memory that endures long after. And maybe if you listen closely enough, you can still hear the faint hum of an old Norse lullaby, something mothers sang while rinsing the day's dust from their children's hair, or what sailors hummed quietly while sitting in the sauna before a voyage. It doesn't matter that the words are lost. The rhythm remains, gentle, steady, ancient. So here you are, centuries later, tracing steam on the glass of time. The Vikings are gone, but their warmth, their strange, stubborn devotion to feeling clean in a dirty world, it lingers like mist.
The fire burns low now. The glow softens until it's only a faint shimmer against the wood. You breathe in, slow, deep, and the warmth settles into your bones like an old friend. The world outside the bathhouse fades to a whisper. The snow, the sea, the slow sigh of the wind across the fjord. Your thoughts drift lazily, untethered. You imagine a Viking woman folding linen by candlelight, a man polishing his comb before sleep, a child watching embers dance on the wall. Small moments, simple ones, but eternal. There's something deeply human in their rituals, an understanding that rest must be earned, and cleanliness, in its own quiet way, is a form of peace. Perhaps that's why we still crave the same feeling, the warmth after cold, the calm after noise, the stillness after motion. You exhale, and your breath becomes part of the mist, part of that same long story. Steam, sleep, stillness, they all blur together until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. The ghosts of the bathhouse fade, leaving only the hush of water against stone. And in that hush, you feel safe. Safe enough to let your thoughts unravel. Safe enough to rest. So close your eyes now. Let the echoes of old Norse lullabies and the hum of invisible hearths carry you. The longhouse fades, the sea quiets, the week ends softly, as it always did, with warmth and with peace. Good night, traveler of the north. You've earned your rest.